was a 17-year-old black boy. And he said, this kid's about 6'3" or 4", huge big kid, who is not responding to her instructions in the class. And she asks him several times to take out his pen and begin his work, and he doesn't do it. And then she yells at him to do that. And then he begins to cry. Now this is a big, big basketball player type with his peers there in this classroom, and this kid begins to cry. And she walks over and sits next to him, putting her arm around his slouched and beaten down shoulders. By now he is sobbing, and the teacher says, "What's wrong, Bobby?" And Bobby remains silent. She asks him again, and she reaches over and softly touches his chin. In a grieving voice with tears running down his face, Bobby says, "Everybody is against me. They always yelling at me." The teacher, feeling compassion and concern, assures him in a soft, caring tone that he is loved. Did you catch what's happened right there? See, right at that moment, everything was on track to that point and then slipped right off track. What should, in that case, she have done to help Bobby with that pain? Bobby, say something to him, "Bobby, that really seems to hurt a lot, or that really hurts you, that everybody's yelling with you. It seems like it's really important to you," or some words to that. "I'm willing to sit here if you want to just notice how that feels inside," or something, that would help Bobby just own rather than tell him to disown.
Yeah.
That he's wrong, right? Let me finish, Pete, just a minute. After class, the teacher and Bobby sit at the window in the empty room to finish talking about his problems. Bobby has stopped crying, but his face is red and his eyes are swollen. The teacher does not quit talking to him until she has coaxed him out of his blue funk. When I read that, I just gulped. Here's such a wonderful person, so dedicated, such a hard job. If any of you have been teachers in inner city or anything like that, you know this. And such a possibility just to help this kid go on another direction, and all missed. Makes your heart ache, really. Because how can a child like that, out of that, probably only has one parent or maybe doesn't know any parents, feeling everybody is against me, and he's so in pain that he'll cry in front of his friends there, always yelling at me. How long can he live that way before he goes out and takes it out on the rest of us? We drive through that neighborhood and get shot or something. See, this is so important for changing this whole atmosphere that frightens and scares all of us and is destroying us, least of all, or most of all, people like Bobby and people that happen to encounter Bobby or ends up in prison or something.
Yeah. See the feeling, everybody's against me, everybody's against me. Know you're loved. You see? Everybody's against me is the feeling. Know you're loved. Takes him away from the feeling, soothes it with the "you're loved" experience, and that's to say nothing about the compassion of the teacher or anything else. Her intent is to help him. But by taking him away from "everybody's against me," it doesn't allow him to go through the "everybody's against me" feeling down into all the story in his life, so that change can happen. You see, this is not an issue of whether that wonderful woman is doing something. I mean, she's doing what she can to help this boy. The intent, the quality of her presence, her caring, compassion are obviously there. And of course they will help. Of course they will help him on his journey. But if in addition to that, instead of taking him away from that, and to assure him, "Oh no, you're loved. or the sister that was saying to when the older person in the hospital or in the retirement center said, I just feel like I'm not worth anything, and somebody said, "Oh, you've done so much with your teaching." You see, and then what the sister did was to help her go in and stay with the "I'm not really worth anything now" feeling, and then it could change. See, it's here inside ourselves to learn a few simple things about how this changes. That's what we're doing here.
It's important, I think, for all of us to have some guidelines that we can check what we're doing or check what we're going to see whether or not they are something that supports this process of congruence or or doesn't seem to. So there are some written guidelines, and you can take them home with you and be part of your treasure chest of things that hopefully you can use along the way in life. So we in this group that we call the Institute, what we are about is learning how to help each other find our own truth and to live in our own truth and to be able to pass that on to others. To find that balance, to live in the harmony that it brings, the community that it brings inside us. And then we have the wisdom to know how to pass that on to our kids and to our grandchildren and so forth. Because the wisdom comes from something greater than ourselves, always. We know how to live in the force. We know how to live connected. We know the body feel of the gift dimension and of the energy and the wisdom that it gives us to answer the questions and the problems that we can find no answers for any other way. We are about guiding each other into the body feel of this graced force, this gracing force, as being at the core and heart of what it is that we want all deeply hunger for and want to connect with. Once again, Joseph Campbell used to say to his students, if you read some of his books or watched the video that he and Bill Moyers did up there at Lucas Ranch, he used to say to his students at Sarah Lawrence, if you really want to change this world or help this world, teach people how to live in it. And that's exactly what we're trying to do as a group. Teach people how to live. That's what's missing. Most people really aren't living. They're just reacting to everything around them. Rushing to this and that, the other thing. All the time reacting. So I think that the group of us that in which we call the Institute for Biospiritual Research, we're really a community of people all over the world, about 2,000 or more of us, that this is precisely what we're trying to understand ourselves and live, and to share that with others, of what it feels like to be alive in the Force, and to be in touch with the truth, and to allow the truth of ourselves to set us free. Free from the slavery that we impose on ourselves or that we allow our culture to impose on us.
And just a little bit then about what happens for many of us as we take the time to go within and to find and discover the gift and be blessed by it. For many who experience this and then maybe share it with a spouse or a friend, the next question for many as they seek meaning in their own life and as they find that this means something to them, then the next question becomes very quickly, well, how can we share this gift? How can we begin to spread this so that other people can benefit by it, especially people in our culture? And the steps that I want to share with you are the steps that we are in the midst of taking. And they're difficult steps because we're trying to create a different kind of structure within which to share this with others. So the simplest way to begin is by saying that there are three areas that we can talk about. The first is organizational structure, and the second is training programs, and the third is financial support, so that you kind of see how those fit together. Now, it regards organizational structure, just very briefly, we have tried to create an organization that is not hierarchical and that is not in the traditional system of dominance. However, at the same time, we have to fit in to the legal system and everything else. So what we have done is we have created an organization with a traditional board of directors. We are, according to the government, a 501c3 non-profit organization, tax deductible, and can receive donations to the extent allowed by law. And we have the traditional board of directors. Then what we have set up beneath that board of directors is a group of 5 Institute service coordinators. These are 3 women and 2 men. Marianne Thompson is our coordinator of regionals, in other words, the regional coordinators, and I'll talk about them in a moment. Ann McGlone in Southern California is our coordinator of in-service training programs. And Loretta Flom in Denver is our office coordinator. And then there's Ed, who's in charge of research development, and I function in both areas, both in service and on the board as secretary-treasurer. so that you get a little bit of a feel. Now the 5 of us work in a consensual model. So we work together and come to decisions together, and we use focusing to make our decisions about, you know, how we're going to move with a training program, or what we're going to do in terms of development, or what projects we're going to take on. And we do that. And then kind of connected to us from the outside are all of the other types of service that are feeding in to help us. For example, Nada is in charge of all of our audio-visual development. We have a group of 60 or more regional coordinators all over the world who Marianne is in touch with. And these regional coordinators in their turn are in touch with well over 250 facilitators who have been trained, and there are groups of facilitators in their areas. So that you begin to get a feel for how that structure is set up. And then we have other areas in addition to the regional coordinators. We have what's called a Biospiritual Leadership Council. And this is made up of people who are focusing facilitators, and yet they have an area of expertise and can bring focusing to a particular group of people or a particular area. There are many areas where we have great lacks and we need someone to come in and do that, but we're waiting for these people to surface from inside the organization. You know, a development officer or someone who will take care of coordinating conferences, things like that. These will gradually begin to surface. That gives you a little bit of a feel of the organizational structure. Now, as far as the training programs are concerned, at this point, I believe we have the pieces of an integrated and systematic expansion program in our training programs. First of all, we have what we call the levels programs. There's a level 1 program, which many of you in here have experienced, and the purpose of this levels program, level 1, is just to give you a feel for the focusing process inside yourself. And this can be done in many formats. You're experiencing one of those formats here in a 6-day program. Many people also experience it like in a 6-week format where they meet one night a week for a couple of hours, and they learn the process that way. We have other formats for working people where individuals will come together with a focusing facilitator or a team and maybe spend a Friday night, all day Saturday, Sunday afternoon, and then Monday evening, Tuesday evening, Wednesday evening, so that it can be done for a work group. But anyway, level 1 is set up that way. Level 2 then is concerned with people who want to take a further step beyond their own focusing and then learn to companion someone else. And so level 2 is concerned primarily with teaching the skills involved in companioning or accompanying another person in learning to focus. And once level 1 and 2 have been gone through, the point of these programs is to move on to what we call level 3, or the development of focusing companions groups. It's our belief that a key element in the potential for social transformation is simply to put more and more groups of focusing companions, to nurture these into being. If we can help more and more groups of focusing companions be born, then they, in their turn, will begin to impact the society and the families around them. Because as they come into communion within themselves, this affects the quality of their presence to those around them, and the transformation can begin to spread and ripple outward. So the goal is the development of more and more focusing companions groups. Now, as a support for the levels programs, we've developed a series of packets of materials so that the person who's leading a levels program can have materials to use. Those materials include many of the video resources that Nadalu is developing and making available to us. So there are written resources, there are video materials that anyone who is who feels called, in a sense, to offer levels programs within a parish or within a community or just within their homes, they have the resources in order to be able to do that, so they're not totally on their own. The ultimate resource that they have is their own experience of the process. And the best stories they will ever find and the best images that they will ever get in touch with are the stories and the images that come out of their own unfolding spirit as they use focusing. But the levels packets are there, and the videos and audio tapes are there as a support for the levels programs themselves, in order that more and more groups of focusing companions can form. And as I've been sitting with this recently, it's very clear to me that not only do we need to train biospiritual focusing facilitators, I believe we need to nurture into being biospiritual focusing teams. I'm beginning to realize that it's not just a matter of I train you as an individual and then you as a lone person go out and start to do something. I think we really need to fall back on an experience that Ed and I have had for many, many years, that when you go out as 2 or 3 to bring a message, you not only bring the content of the message, but you bring a lot of what's going on in your own in-between life. And believe me, people attend to that. I mean, they know that we can be 2 cantankerous, ornery people here, and we do have our own ways, and we do have a lot of battles. I mean, just talk to Nada. She was telling us a wonderful story at lunch today, where at the Angel Fire conference, she was testing the mics and got them tested, and then just left the cameras running, and the 2 of us got into one of our usual. And it's a very human kind of thing. And when you bring that and people know that it's human, it's real, you're struggling, but you're growing, and you sense a lot of what's happening in that, that becomes an important piece of the message. So in an integrated fashion, as far as training programs are concerned, we have the levels program packets, we have various formats for offering the levels programs, and the result are small groups of focusing companions that are beginning to form. And finally, in terms of the financial support for all of this, because as an organization grows, you need some support for it. Within our organization, neither Ed nor I take a salary. We're operating at this time on a budget of between $55,000 and $60,000 a year, and that's covering all of our networking and everything else. But how do we support ourselves? We support ourselves, first of all, by a membership. And there are membership forms that some of you have seen over there. And the membership forms, I would encourage any of you who view this, or any of you who are here, if you are not a member and you would like to become a member of the Institute, if you could fill that form out, and if you would put it together with your donation, and perhaps I'll be here before the session tomorrow morning. If you'll give that to me, I'll send the whole packet of this material to Loretta as soon as I get home, and then she will be in touch with you. She will also give you a 25% discount certificate, which will enable you then to order the materials that are listed as resources in the newsletter. And these, again, are the booklets and the pamphlets and the videotapes that will not only help you as an individual in your own focusing process and support you in it and give you further clarification and background and insight, but for those of you who feel that this might be a form of ministry that fits for you and feels right, this will give you the resources to be able to enable you to be able to take this gift and offer it to others. So that first off, we do have a membership, and that's a significant piece of what supports us. It is not enough, but it's a significant piece. The next way that we support ourselves is that we have a pledge And many people in our organization simply send in a monthly pledge or a yearly pledge or every 6 months or something like that. They put a little bit into the organization. That, too, in itself has helped us immensely. In addition to that, individuals will sometimes make one-time donations of larger amounts, and that, too, is a piece of our support. But we're trying to do this in a way that does not, that we don't go outside of the organization at this time for grants or anything like that, that in one sense would control us, because we would have a lot that we would have to be accountable for. That may become necessary as we take on certain kinds of projects where we feel we need a larger amount of money. But that at least will give you a little bit of a feel for how our financial structure is set up.
Peter, excuse me. I think it's important to emphasize that we're all volunteers from the top to the bottom. And we all work out of our houses, our own homes, like Susan was talking about, she and her husband, telling the interesting story about how the Russians came over here to learn about their work with the handicapped and got all dressed up and had their suits on and their briefcases and everything, were ready to go down to Montgomery Street in downtown San Francisco, and then they took them to the back to the garage behind the house. Well, that's the way we all are. We don't want to put money into overhead. We don't want to run hotels or restaurants or anything. Your donations go directly into this network, meaning telephone bills and faxing and connecting people and getting the resources necessary to help people. And the only salary that goes out is what we pay Loretta to take care of office expenses, as you'd have to pay a secretary. The rest goes directly to people and to networking. And that's it. So we're all working out. Marianne's working out of her room. Loretta has a spare room in her apartment in Denver and so forth. So no overhead and no salaries. Otherwise, we could never have made it through even the first year, let alone 20-some years now.